In this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, which is the podcast for the veteran business community, I'm chatting to David Deane-Spread, who had a really interesting career as a military officer, which led him into many years of working in covert government operations before a bit of a spectacular bankruptcy in the 1990s, and how David was able to phoenix his life and capture his experience to create a really successful executive coaching business. So jump on and listen to David Deane-Spread on the Military Mindset for Business podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, which is the podcast for the veteran business community. So today I've got David Deane-Spread from Metattude with me. One thing I love, everyone knows I love telling stories about veterans and their pathways into business and all the different twists and turns that they take on their journey. David's actually been out of the military for some time, maybe 30, 40 years. So a whole depth and wealth of experience on the other side of his life as a military policeman. David, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So, David, you're a Perth boy. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the military in the first place. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Perth, in a little town called Medina, which is south of Perth. I was actually made in India, dropped in London, and landed in Perth by the time I was four.
So, how
So,
did you get there? Was your dad a diplomat or traveler or businessman?
no, my family's from India.
Yep.
We're Irish Indian. That's our mix.
Fan-
And they left India in 47. Went to England where mum delivered me. Dad had been in the British Army in India, and he went to England as an RSM, and then left the force there and joined their Internal Revenue Tax Office. What do they call
Yep.
themselves? And then we came to Australia, where the rest of our family had moved.
How do you feel having a dad as an RSM influence your decision?
Well, everyone in our family, all the eldest sons in our family for over 200 years had been in the military. So we were a military family, and I'm the last of them.
It was just a natural progression that it was, almost like a rite of passage, or hey, this is just part of your pathway as the Deane-Spread family is to serve.
Yeah, yeah. My both my parents encouraged me to join the military, mainly because they thought I needed the discipline.
Yeah.
Um, but I was okay with it as well. I actually won a Duntroon scholarship. But I was a poor student. My attitude to school was not good. And so the headmaster made me repeat my fourth year. And to the shame of my parents, I had to hand the scholarship back. And I ended up going to Portsea instead.
Into Portsea. So tell us what was Portsea like? Now, okay, before we go there, what year are we talking about here?
Oh, we're talking 67. I went into Portsea
Right, yes.
and
So
graduated in 68.
that's significant because we're right in the middle of the Vietnam War here. What was it like going to Portsea and joining up at those times?
Well, we were ready to go to Vietnam. I didn't go in the end. I've been elsewhere, but not to Vietnam. So we actually had a choice. We'd either we thought we'd go to Vietnam. We all knew that that's where what we were trained for as platoon commanders. Um, but we also had an offer from an outside party to go to Biafra.
Where was that? Sorry.
Biafra in Africa. They were recruiting for Africa. And
That is something that
they tried to recruit us because we laughed and said, "No, not going there. There's no food."
yeah. I did. I'm think I'm a modestly adept military historian, but I had no idea that that was the case.
Well, no, it wasn't an official thing. It was done by recruiters from from Africa.
Yep.
They came to Portsea. They actually visited us at the Portsea Hotel.
Like a lateral transfer program.
No, no, it was no, get out of the army, resign, come over. We'll pay you well.
Yeah, right. More like a contracting gig.
Yeah, but very unofficial. I mean, it was pretty scammy, and so none of us did.
Yeah. I don't
And
that's and
that
what
was
was happening
weird.
in what particularly was happening in Africa at that time that they were enticing you to go over there?
Well, there was a civil wars in Rhodesia then, as it was Biafran. There was genocide taking place. A whole bunch of stuff was happening in Africa at the time.
Right.
But
So
Mad Mike Hoare is you might remember him into your military history. He is a British weirdo soldier, and he became a mercenary over there.
that is one I'm not familiar with, but I am going to do a little bit
H
of
O
research
H
later.
O. His surname is Hoare, Mike or Mad Mike Hoare.
Got him. I've just bought him. I've just bought him up on the side here and have a sticky beak after this. But so you got through Portsea. What
Yep.
corps did you graduate into? Military police?
Into the military police. Yep. My first posting was the 2IC of the military police, as the no of the military prison, 1 MCE in Holsworthy.
Yep.
I I didn't like that much.
Yeah.
You're basically a prisoner just the other side of the bar, following the same rules as they were, pretty
Yeah.
much. You had to be there for them. And I celebrated my 21st birthday um, in as a duty officer in the prison. I was in. I had a number of other postings and trainings. I mean, I did the Victorian Police Detective Training School, and was attached to the Victorian Police for a while. Um, Specialised in investigations and then covert work in the military police, and ended up at the military police school. And from there, I was headhunted into the Federal Narcotics Bureau. So I actually left the army and went into the Federal Narcotics Bureau. So the transition was fairly easy. I mean, I'd
Yep.
been out of uniform a lot in the military police. So the graduation, if you like, or the transition from the military police into the Federal Narcotics Bureau was relatively easy. But at the same time, I won't talk too much about this, but I was actually involved in another agency, a discreet agency that operates
Hmm.
offshore only, and spent a fair bit of time offshore doing their stuff. Um, when I finally the Federal Narcotics Bureau then merged into the AFP, at which time I left and just stayed on as a contractor for the other agency.
Yep.
Which I did for over a decade. And I've sort of operated as far east as Panama, pretty much throughout Southeast Asia, as far north as Kathmandu. And my last journey was Northern Ireland,
Okay.
and
Out of
then became a full-on civilian in 1990. Um, but I had business operations as my I mean the best cover is no cover, hidden in
mm,
plain sight. And so I had business operations in the Republic of Ireland that gave me opportunity to do what I needed to do in Northern Ireland.
when
And
we're
that
talking, I won't unpack what you were doing on the government side of the house, but just from a business perspective, what kind of business operations were you setting up?
so I actually I had a range of them. So in the beginning I had a range of things. So I had a magazine agency, advertising agency in the first instance. So that gave me, and I looked after a range of global magazines, Interavia, which is a defense magazine, Scientific American, Asian Business, which gave me reasons to be in any of those countries.
Yep. Well, as someone who's I'm an avid traveler. Is one of my favorite things is to get to the international airport and go somewhere, go anywhere. Out of all of those places, give us somewhere a little bit off the beaten track that you've been, and where's one of the more peculiar places that you've been?
I found Panama very peculiar.
Yep. What
Um,
was there? Was there political things happening in Panama at the time? Am I right?
no,
Noriega,
no,
is that Panama?
Noriega was my target, but the what we, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff behind that, and it made me realize, and this is going to be interesting, that America's not really our friend.
Mm.
They use us,
Well, it's
and
a it's a big boys game, isn't it?
it's a big boys game, and there were things that I was doing in Panama that I didn't need to do, as it turned out, because the other agency, the American agency, was already all over it.
Yep. It's interesting,
But
particularly.
our guys didn't know.
Yeah.
And Kathmandu was fantastic. I loved that. It was weird. I mean, to go up to this big temple that was almost in the center of the city, and the timber that had built the temple was 2,000 years old when the timber was cut, and the
Yeah, that's
temple was over
ridiculous.
2,000 years old.
That's ridiculous. I was listening to
Uh,
a kids.
Unbelievable.
It was funny. Like we listen to a lot of kids trivia when we do a lot of drives in the car, and I think it was what's the oldest tree in the world? And there's a tree somewhere in North America that's 4,500 years old, which is I think it puts it like the start of the pyramids or something like that. So,
Yeah,
I've,
yeah,
so
that's fascinating.
yeah,
The human life is extremely ancient, but nature's more ancient, isn't it?
yeah, it's we're what do they say? We're a blade of grass that pops up, seeds, and just disappears into the future.
Oh yeah, yep, yep.
Well,
Time is. We're only here for a blink, just a blink.
there's two places in the world that you've been to that I haven't. You got me you've got me on those two, both Panama. I've been to Costa Rica, got a little bit close, but I've never been anywhere near the Alps, so they're definitely on the bucket list up there. So, mate, when you got through this phase of working, with the government, it sounds like another story there over a couple of beers, one to one, Chatham House. But where did you end up settling, and what made you get back to Perth in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I did a fair bit of stuff. I moved around a lot in the eastern states and offshore, of course. But in 1981, I came back to Perth.
Yep.
Um, and this time I was ostensibly a civilian, but but working as a contractor for the government. I came here and did all that magazine stuff, and then I went back to the eastern states for a short period of time. Came back here again, and decided that I needed to set up different businesses. I'd sold the agency, by the way, so I had a bit of money, and I started wanting to float some um, companies on the stock exchange during the roaring 80s, which you may remember. And and at the same time I was doing this other contract work, which was not it didn't take up 100% of my time. It was sort of particular, go out there and do certain work and come back. Um, but I left all that. My marriage, I'd lost a marriage earlier on because as an undercover operator, you're never there, and you never know. They don't know where you are. Not good for a relationship. So that ended, and then my second marriage ended in '89 again for the same reason. I was hardly ever there, and
Yep.
they never knew where I was. And sometimes I'd come back and I had a different appearance, different colored hair, and all that sort of shit.
Got to
And
be
it
a little
was
bit
just
unnerving for your partner, especially.
very
Yeah.
unsettling. And I was to be very frank about it, I was very much involved in what I did.
Hmm.
and you know, in hindsight, I should never have gotten married in the first place. But I'm delighted because you know, I've been lucky enough to have 4 kids,
Yep.
with three different ladies, and so you know that sort of enriched my life. But in 1990, I came out of the Irish scenario, and at the same time, all my businesses were suffering because we'd had that crash in '87. And at the time of the crash, I was very, very exposed. I owed $10 million.
Just a little bit there, $10 million on the line.
Yeah, to the bank mainly. And I spent 3 years, and I paid back $4 million.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I was broke, busted, burnt out, tried to do too much. And I had still owed $6 million to the Westpac and the ATO. And they hadn't pursued me, and I'd negotiated moratoriums with them to give me time to repay. And they could see that I'd done that after all. I'd repaid, did you see that? $10 million. I'd repaid $4 million, so there was six to go, and they thought I could do it.
Mm.
But I burnt out, and I ended up before they did anything. I went down to the insolvency people and said, look, I think I need to go bankrupt because I'm burnt out. I can't continue to find ways of paying back the money.
Can I
They
just grab you
listened to
there,
my
mate? If I can just grab and ask you a couple of questions about that sort of time of your life. So you've got this
mm,
one, and I'm sort of thinking here of masks, or I don't want to say facade, that's not the right term, but you've got this one world that you're living in, which is discreet and confidential. You've got this other world you're living in, which is business. You've got this family world that you're living in. How are you juggling or managing your three, dare I say, personalities or masks with these three very competing worlds?
there was a lot of similarity in the business and the operational side of things. So that wasn't too hard. The hardest part really, and the part I neglected the most was the family. And so, you know, clearly, I mean, you know, when you look at it, what happened, I mean, I burnt out, and I couldn't do it.
This is
I
that
couldn't sustain it. It wasn't
as well,
sustainable.
though. For a lot of us in service who, like when you deploy overseas or when you're lucky enough to get an operational run, you might be away, 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever that is. But it's even when you don't deploy, it's the constant routine and training of just being out bush and being on ships. And it's so easy for us to get lost in that world of service because it's so much of a part of our identity and who we are that quite often it does happen. Families unfortunately suffer.
Oh, look, no doubt. And my family was certainly one of those families, or my families. And so both marriages crumbled because of my lack of presence.
Yep. Yeah, but it's just part of it. It is. And again, there's that many. I don't know. To be honest, I've been out of the army for a few years now. That's about 7 years. So I'm not sure what operational tempo is. But when I was in between like 205 to about 2016, there was Iraq, Timor, Afghanistan, Solomons, all the United Nations things going on. You
Yeah,
would probably expect to be away from home 5 or 6 months a year as that's just normal. And let's not even forget our Navy brethren who ships are designed to go to sea. That's what they do.
yeah,
So it's
absolutely, absolutely. Actually, my EA's partner's a naval officer. They've actually just come back from the AUKUS stuff in Washington after 3 years. So, you get to see where they are right now, and he's away more than he is at home.
yeah, no, it's just the life, isn't it? So you've
Yeah.
got this. So you continue to get out of the military. You're still serving in this other government role. What do you feel like you're a natural entrepreneurial business person? Was it a natural thing for you to start these businesses as part of your, dare I say, cover?
It was it actually I became really interested in it in business as an as an alternative. 'Cause I knew at some point in time I was going to leave government service. I did I you know when I was much younger, I did once upon a time think that I was going to spend my entire career in the army, but I quickly realised that actually I don't make a very good regimental officer.
Oh, look, to be honest, I the army was the best job in my life, and I do remember on one of my basic courses down in Albury, it was like first year lieutenant kind of stuff, and they were like, "Who in this room is going to be a brigadier one day?" And you know, I foolishly put my hand up, thinking that's I got to captain. That was only one up, but I put my hand up at the time because I was actually convinced that this was the pathway for me. But I
Yeah,
think
that was. Go ahead.
one of the big realities for me is my next door neighbor, a great guy by the name of Darren Simons, who was also my very first OC at the 3rd Battalion, a proper infantryman, and I was a RAMI officer. Um, I remember him saying to me that soldiers need to be out bush, and I just wasn't a good bush officer. I like the barracks life, the squash courts, morning teas, PT every day, but uh, I wasn't a natural bush soldier. I got to admit.
Yeah, I don't mind, and I love the bush. In fact, I'm on the day after Anzac Day, I'm going out bush for a week, completely away from electronics, go deep into the WA Southwest bush. And
Well, I like
so,
camping. Camping is different to bush, though. Like when you have a
oh yeah,
fire
it
and you
is.
have
I mean,
it
yeah,
may be.
bushwork, military bushwork is not glamping by any stretch of the imagination.
No, no,
But
no. I do, but
but by the same token, I was never I didn't like all the regimentation,
yeah.
and my profile is suited more being what I ended up doing, covert work, which is not um, far. I mean, there are disciplines there, of course, but they're different. They're not regimental disciplines. In fact, you had to regularity was not the thing that you wanted to have.
Mm. It's interesting
You
because
needed.
I actually think that I quite liked the regimental structure. The rules, the
Sure.
timings, being involved with it all. But now, ultimately, for me, I didn't join the army till I was 30, which was far later
Okay.
than most of my peers. So by the
Yeah.
time I was, 42-ish, couple of kids, the reality of posting cycles and the effect on family, it was just a natural transition for me to move on. Plus, I just
Of
love
course.
business. So business was just ready and itching, waiting for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was attracted to it as well. I mean, I first attracted to it when I was in the Narcotics Bureau because it was because I was moving around. I mean, I was based out of Sydney, and I was moving around. I was seeing a lot of business activities. A lot of the people involved in drugs were in business in any event, and used the narcotics avenue as a funding source.
Yeah. Good point.
And so, so it actually goes, you know, they go together. It is
Yeah.
business after all.
Yeah.
You know.
Mate.
But
So,
I no, but I enjoyed that. Of course but the I made a large number of mistakes though because I didn't know what I was doing. I felt I was bulletproof. I had this I transferred the confidence that I had from my operational capability into business without realizing that there is actually a whole bunch of other business skills which are not operational but financial and structured in another way that I didn't deeply understand, and I basically set myself up to be a rising star quickly, make money, and then see that as a measurement of success. But I didn't think about it in the longer term and in the bigger picture, which
David. I'm really
You
glad
know,
that you said that. I'm really glad that you shared that point because similarly to me, we come out of the military and we are built with this, built or trained or nurtured into this bulletproof, I can achieve anything kind of mentality. But there are definitive skills in business that have nothing to do with the military. Yes, yes,
correct.
leadership, yes, operations, yes, planning, yes, human, management, all of that. But there's some really basics of, marketing, sales, cash flow, accounting that you just generally don't get those skills, which are fundamentals to set up a great business. I think military people and veterans are well poised to be great business people if they can, accept the gaps and, get the right support and help. Because in our first business, now we did quite well. We got into a little niche. It grew really quickly, like out of our control. Within 2 years, we were doing, $4 million in revenue. That's not profit. That's one of the other lessons you learn quickly. But ultimately, we left millions of dollars on the table with mistakes just because we were bumbling our way through, just feeling in the dark, testing and adjusting. So for us, it's part of the reason why the veteran business community even exists, is to give other people that support community network structure to learn or share from others.
100%. Totally agreed. I mean, you do have this ability to do anything, um, and then that's a transition issue, isn't it? Really it points to that transition, and that's why a lot of military people end up in the police or fire brigade or St. John's ambulance. You go from one uniform to another,
Yeah.
and there's similar structures. But the guys and girls who go out into pure commerce, and an interesting ride. And my ride is, roller coaster. And I mean, I was so cocksure of myself that I did things that I should never have done. For instance, the root cause of my bankruptcy was that I took on the idea that I was going to float these companies in the Australian stock market, and instead of putting down, like you do when you buy a house, put down an option to purchase subject to
Mm-hmm.
finance, I put down a contract to purchase and a deposit.
Mm. Straight up.
I was so cocksure of myself, and the crash beat me to it. I'd actually secured all the money, secured everything, secured the underwriting. And then the crash happened. And of course, the underwriting has a get out clause that if the stock market goes up or down 20%, the deal's off.
Yep.
And I got caught by that. So they walked away, and I was landed with all my deposits were now, you know, at risk. I couldn't get out of the deals. The guys were going to sue me for failure to execute the contract. I negotiated with them all and said, keep the deposit and let me walk away. I've got nothing else. You've got everything I've got. The money's gone. I'm out.
How did you find that from an ego perspective? From someone who's been high achiever in the military, doing sneaky peeky stuff, and things that have a certain level of prestige and identity bound into it. What was the realities of bankruptcy like?
In the beginning, it was bloody awful. It was absolutely, I was full of shame and guilt.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I actually carry a bit of shame and guilt for my government service too. And this was a different level, different in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, this was me failing,
Yeah.
and
Is that the identity that you'd built for yourself? The reality, it's such a really important thing that who we are, who we think we are, who people, who we think people see we are, you know, and it really
yeah,
breaks it right down.
I got a different take on that because of what I've done. I mean, I've been pretty much a chameleon.
Yep.
Uh, in fact, there was a time when I wasn't sure who I was.
Mm.
And I made a mistake once. I actually went into my bank, and signed a check with my undercover name.
Mm.
And that's when I realized, oh shit, I'm losing my identity. I don't know who I am. That I would go to my bank that expected to see David Deane-Spread signed a check, but he signed it with his undercover name. And the guy said, what the? Because he knew my signature.
Yeah.
And
What is this?
that was a big wake up for me that hey, I'm losing it. I've been here too long.
It's not a life that I've have any understanding or experience with, but it is a big risk to lose yourself with the adrenaline or that mask. You put the mask on. Is sometimes the mask, do you feel it's a better person on the other mask, or how do you relate to this acting life?
Pretty superficially. I mean, and I think I think I was, and well, I know I was superficial
Yep.
as a human being. Um, and really, the best gift I've received ever was going bankrupt
Mm.
in terms of me and my development. I went down to the pits. I went down to the bottom end. No, I didn't think about suicide. Um, well, I had one thought about it, and then quickly realised that no, that's not on.
Yep.
I've got kids. Um, but then I just started to rebuild myself from the inside out. I got clear about my values, got really clear about my values, got really clear about my purpose. Over time, not that didn't happen immediately. But that took 7 years.
So, well, this is 1980. If I get my maths right, 1987 was the crash. Was that the
Yeah,
trigger that?
1980, that was a crash. Then I bombed out finally in 1990.
Yep.
So 3 years later. And then I really had 7 years in the wilderness.
Mm. Were you in
Um,
Perth at that time?
yeah, yeah, Perth. Yep. I was by now I'm back in Perth. I spent 7 years working out what to do, trying different things. Learned how to play the didgeridoo, and actually made money out of the out of playing didgeridoo and teaching didgeridoo and selling didgeridoos and all of that. So I went right off. Grew my hair long and all
Right.
that.
No, I can only wish for that. Let's just if I can
No,
just
well, I'm
put
losing
some.
mine now. It's all going.
Yeah, mate, you've probably got 20, 30 years on me. Like better luck, better. Just a quick one. Just in terms of phoenixing your life or this sort of resurrecting moment. If I can ask, how old were you then?
Wait, when?
Uh,
In
when
19,
when you went through
in
the bankruptcy?
1990,
Yeah.
in 1990, I was 42.
Okay. Because just for other people listening, that as we go through this sort of journey, we can sometimes feel older than we are in our 30s and 40s or whatever. But the chance to actually refresh, restart, start from nothing and go again. This is mid 40s now. It's time to reset.
Yep.
Okay, so where are we going from here?
So I had that 7 years in the wilderness, working out what to do, doing didgeridoos and what have you, and then, funnily enough, um, the guy that I used to use to do my due diligence work for me, when I was doing putting those deals together, he'd now become the course controller for the MBA program at UWA. And he said, David, would you like to do a guest spot as a lecturer on the human face of entrepreneurship? I said, and his name is David too. I said, David, mate, I don't think you want me. I've just gone bankrupt. He said, yeah, that's it. That's exactly the story. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And I said, because I'm on the bones of my ass at this point, and he said, I said, what's the pay like? He said, oh, it's $100 an hour. I said, done. I'm
I'm
in.
on. I'm in. Yeah, because
And so
as
I did that for a number of years, but it's only part time,
yeah.
very, very, and I couldn't live on it. But it gave me the insight of what I could do.
Mm.
by getting up there and telling my story and relating to the students. They're all mature age students. They're all lawyers and accountants doing an executive MBA. I just realised this is it. This is how I can use all that knowledge, not the operational stuff, but the leadership stuff that goes with it, and the other, the other skills, the people skills that we learn in those areas. I mean, I as a in the work, I specialised in people. That basically
Mhm.
was it, and how to earn trust rapidly. Um, how to you know influence people, persuade people, and that was the gig. And then I just flipped that into the operational and commercial, sort of the commercial sense of how do we deploy that. And that then became, I realized this is what I can do. And so then that began this journey that I've been on now. And I'm going to stay on this journey until I drop dead.
So when does Metattude kick off? So you're now in the university. When you because you probably have to serve a tenure from bankruptcy where you
Oh, no,
can't.
I mean, yeah, 3 years bankruptcy. That was from 1990, end of 1993, November 1990 to November 1993. Um, I celebrated the coming out of bankruptcy by going to Germany and playing didgeridoo at a big musical festival, and did a European didgeridoo tour.
Yeah. Like, but let's just
Back
hang
in
on,
the
just
day.
and let's just did you do tour by yourself or with a group or
Yeah, with my partner,
yeah?
with Wendy, my wife.
And like what are
This,
these like
yes,
playing in theaters or like on the street busking
yeah,
or
busking. I busked. I busked in the streets of Amsterdam. I played on Radio Nuremberg in Germany. I actually went to a big music festival in Germany. That's how we kicked it off. And I sent over um, 45, I think 45 or 50 didgeridoos ahead of me, and sold them
yeah?
all for 250 US dollars each.
Right.
And
Oh,
that funded the trip.
and have
Played in
I
Irish. I actually went back to Ireland, with but to the south to Cork, which is where the Irish part of my family comes from, and played in Irish pubs, and yeah, had a ball.
I just got. Now, how did you find like obviously the Didge is just such no, I love it. The iconic Australian sound. Would you be sitting there like, with your tea towel out or your hat on the ground and getting a
Yeah,
yeah, brilliant,
yeah, I
mate.
did that. I did that in Amsterdam. It was snowing. It was fucking cold.
Yeah. I love it,
But
mate. I love it.
playing the ditch keeps you warm.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. I've never quite got the circular breathing. I grew up in the Blue Mountains, which is in Katoomba, really alternative, sort
Yeah,
of
no,
community
I
growing
know.
up.
Well, I love it.
The
I
did
love that part of New South Wales. It's
Yeah, and the
fantastic.
Didge was I had a lot of mates play Didge, and I could get the sound out, but I just couldn't get the circular motion of consistent sound. So
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine playing the ditch in, going across one of those valleys and
yeah,
getting the echo of it coming back. That would be fantastic.
beautiful sound. So
Yeah.
a little bit of this seems like a bit of a like almost a healing moment, is it? This Germany
Oh,
trip?
yeah. Now, 7 years of healing,
Yeah.
and then and during that, part time at the university, very part time. Not couldn't make money out of that. It's survival stuff. But then now I had a flying instructor. I was in the process of getting my license before I went bankrupt. And my flying instructor was an electrician by trade, and he went back to his trade and asked me if I'd help him grow his business.
Hmm.
And that was in 1997. And I said, yes, I will help him. And he was my first client. Um, he went from being a very small electrical outfit with a few men and a couple of vehicles, and we took it to being a national company with I think 400 or 500 staff all around Australia and head office in Sydney. And he sold the business for a very handsome sum and retired
Mm.
in 2017. So I was with him for 20 years.
Yep.
And as it turns out, his son went into business separately, and he's currently one of my clients in the eastern states. So I've got intergenerational clients now.
One of the things that I just want to unpack shortly your bespoke model of coaching and unpack that. But the first thing that sort of stands out to me is experience. Is how do I say this? Through the ups and downs of life, through your military, through all of the things that you've done, with your businesses on the side of the covert stuff, to the bankruptcy. Sometimes the best lessons in life are the worst lessons. And now you've got an
Look,
ability
I
to see these things coming from a distance.
100% agree. And I think part of that lesson bit is that you don't see them coming,
Yeah.
right? You don't see them coming, and bang, you get hit. And now you've got to do something. You've got to recover. So your resilience is tested,
Mm.
your adaptability is fully tested. Um, you become very much more self-aware, or not. If you don't, then you stay stuck. But one of the most important things that you get out of it is situational awareness.
Yep.
And that then gives you that ability to look further ahead, to start to think about, well, what are the consequences of what I do now? What will those consequences be like in 5 years' time? What will be the butterfly effect in 5 years' time? And I never thought like that when I was operational, because it was very operational, very tactical. Strategy was done by other people, and I did the operational stuff.
Yep. Find a
And
problem
so I
solver.
wasn't actually looking much further ahead than the end of this task.
Yep.
And then I come back and I'll be redeployed.
The business
So
doesn't work like that, especially when it's your money on the table.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And that's the biggest thing I've learned. The single biggest thing I've learned is that, followed up by the need to remain balanced across the aspects of your life. And where I was not, I was definitely not balanced. I was very much focused on the operational stuff. And then I tried to use I had that same attitude in business, and it brought me undone.
Let's just talk a little bit about that balance for a second, because as military and service people, whatever the service is, it's very easy to get caught up in that lifestyle. But I've got to admit,
Yeah.
it can be exactly the same, because busy people are going to be busy. When we go into business, we can use those sort of excuses in the military if that's who I are, but it's very easy to get obsessed with business as well, and to take that same work ethic and to maintain that same lack of balance. What do you find in your experience that people make mistakes on the most?
Certainly the balance. I mean, I'm watching it now with clients, and it's the first thing I'm doing with my clients is to help them get some balance,
Yep.
and they're not. And as I'm seeing things now, particularly with AI and the learning curve that they have to go through, they are busy learning, busy adapting, busy trying to make the business work better.
Mm.
And their health and their family are the things that they're sacrificing still.
Yeah, because one of my favorite quotes is from The Lion King. There's always more to do than can ever be done, but being able to really focus on what needs to be done. So let's go down into now Metattude and your personal methodology of coaching. Um, Tell us what makes you different, and what's your way of doing things.
So, as you know, in the military and the similar agencies, the training is a big part of what we do. And I became very fascinated with initially trainers that bored the shit out of me, and I never wanted to be a trainer who put people to sleep. You know what I mean? And so I
Training,
became
yeah.
very interested in how to become a really good trainer, how to become a really good coach, how to become a really good transfer of knowledge and skills and attitudes. And one of the grounding things that happened was, when I was in the Narcotics Bureau, every time we did a covert operation, nothing ever went perfectly. No covert operation ever goes smoothly. It's chaos. And there's always in the after action reviews and the debriefs, we work out, what went wrong, how did that happen, how do we train for that? But we realize that all accidents and mishaps occur because the operator's attitude in the moment wasn't the way it should have been. So we needed attitudinal competence. And I
Yep.
started banging on about this, and my masters said, "It's all bullshit. You train for skills and you hire for attitude." I said, I believe that attitude is a skill.
Mm.
And they said, "Well, prove it." And so I actually did, and I ended up writing the manual on how to train covert operators' attitude. And that I've now adapted that to be my core piece of work, attitudinal competence. And if you Google attitudinal competence, you'll see whose name pops up.
Okay. Well, I was somewhat
And that
resonating with
became
this
a fundamental to my coaching.
because I must admit, before I joined the army, I was a farmer. I think I was pretty laid back and chilled out, but I think the military brought out a different side of my personality, whether it was created or nurtured or taught. But I also, with the exposures that you get in training, uh, you actually, I think that your attitude. Well, let's go back. Nature versus nurture on the attitude bit. Share a little bit about how training supports the development of attitude.
Yeah. So in attitude is crucial. Attitude is the most powerful thing that we can nurture in ourselves. And I'm arguing for your attitude to be um, very adaptable, very flexible. I'm arguing for that.
Yep.
And that means like a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. That's another way of looking at it. Dr. Caroline Dweck's work. And attitudinal competence gives you the ability to choose your best attitude for what has happened, what is happening, and what might happen, and not be stuck with habitual attitudes.
Let
So,
me just
I
pick
mean,
that
for
up.
instance, yeah,
If I
go
can just
ahead.
pick you on that bit, if I can pick about it. You just said choose your attitude, right?
Correct. Yes.
This is now not an emotional response, but a deliberate action to perform in a particular environment.
100%. And you think about your training. Think about the training. Just think about the range training.
Yeah.
When you're on the range, what's being drummed into you? What attitude is being drummed into you when you're holding that weapon to your shoulder and you're about to squeeze the trigger? What's going through your mind, and what were the drill sergeants and the range officers saying to you to get you to have that attitude that you will squeeze that trigger, it will be on a target?
Mm,
What's your attitude? What attitude are they giving to you? What's the attitude on the drill ground, on the drill, doing drill?
mm,
What are they drumming into you? And why are they doing that? It's for your survival, for your effectiveness on in the field. And it's attitudinal training um, done as a skill. They didn't know that. They were just following thousands and thousands of years of process,
yeah.
military process. But the fundamental thing is you are being indoctrinated with a particular attitude. And every one of us who's come out of the military, whether it's the Army, Navy, or Air Force, has had that training. But they didn't couch it as attitudinal competence. It was they wanted a specific attitude from you. And I'm saying we can take that fundamental and we can give ourselves the rainbow, or across the spectrum. I don't want to use the rainbow because I'm not talking about LGBT at this point.
Mhm.
I'm talking about a spectrum of
Mm,
attitudes that are going to be useful for any given situation, rather than a one attitude that you'll take to that particular, situation. So because here's the other thing. There is no situation that is identical to another.
yep.
So why would we have an identical attitude?
Mm. Hang on a sec.
And when
So,
you
hang on. Whoa, whoa.
go,
So, an attitude then is not necessarily something that you. pick out of your toolbox, but something that is an adaptable mindset.
It is, yeah. Having an adaptable mindset is the key. And so what is mindset is simply a particular attitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
A mindset is a particular attitude.
Yeah. Oh, this mate, this is fascinating. So, and this is where really just the ability to master this in your executive coaching program, and why people who have to make, big important decisions, to be able to have these functional tools to be able to adapt, to an ever-changing world is so important.
Yeah. And look, I got really good at that as a covert operator. I had to change my attitude all the time. I had to change my appearance even.
Yeah.
And so there were deep changes that had to stand the test of scrutiny. And so the thing that held all that together was my ability to adopt the needed, whatever the necessary attitude was in the moment, and to actually feel it and live it.
So tell me about, who are your ideal clients? Who are the people you're getting the
My,
best results out of with your coaching?
yeah, cool. Thank you. My ideal clients are leaders and business owners who intend to become the publicly recognized preferred employer in their space, and then leverage that to become the publicly recognized preferred provider of their goods and services in their
Mm,
particular space. And I'm sifting for that. I only work with five companies at a time and non-competing,
yep.
and I make sure that that's what they want to do. If they don't want to do that, then I don't want to work with them.
Yep. Yep. Fascinating.
Because
And how does your coaching model work? It's all one. It sounds like it must be one to one.
well, it's a mixture. It's there's one-on-one. There's I do. Each person gets profiled deeply. They sit with a
Yep.
60-page report on their behaviours, their communication style, what their drivers are, and their emotional intelligence. And we work on those as a fundamental. I mean, it's an ABC model. The attitudes, behaviours, and conversations.
Mm,
That's how leadership is deployed, isn't it?
yep.
So we
It's
get
really
down to that nitty granular components, and we realize that most leaders are not trained in how to have difficult conversations.
Yep.
They're not trained to actually really understand the people they're working with, to even look at, listen to a person talking and work out what's not being said or why is it not being said. And they don't have that level of curiosity and perception to deeply understand the people that they're relying on to make them money or to deliver the service,
Yeah.
and they're not trained to do that. And so that's where I go. That's where my passion and my interest is in helping these leaders to be the very best version of themselves in deploying their humanity to being an effective leader that other people want to follow.
Wait, how long's Metattude been going for now?
This is year 27.
Yeah. Brilliant. I think the biggest sort of resounding point to me having this conversation with you today is, again, experience. We I use this metaphor all the time, right? It is impossible to learn how to ski or play golf without being taught. It is literally not possible to go out and be a great golfer without doing lessons. No matter how
Correct.
much you practice, if you don't have those fundamental skills, and quite often when you come out of the military, we have that bulletproof. I can just do this. I will just bulldoze my way. I've been taught how to problem solve, but I've experienced this in my business. Literally in the last year, we've just hired a CEO in one of our businesses. I was the founder of the business. I was the subject matter expert from ground up. I got it to being, multi-million in revenue. But I was always trying to ideate and create solutions for problems that I'd never faced before. Now, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I get this bloke come in. He's run a company that's been 20 times the size of mine. And he's just like, why are you doing that? I've seen this many times before. Let's just do it like this. And so this is where I think coaching and community really come into this. Is you can either battle away, ideate, make mistakes, fumble your way through it, or there is a community of people out there, and there's people here available to help if you want to really exponential your success. How do we get there faster, quicker? And I think that's what Metattude's about.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, I've made all those mistakes myself.
Yeah.
I do agree entirely with you, and for the same reasons. I mean, I thought I was bulletproof. I had a huge amount of confidence, but I lacked certain skills, and I learned the hard way. I mean, and you can't learn it from reading a book either. You've actually got to
Just got to live it.
get your hands dirty.
And you gotta earn your stories, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
mate. David, it's a real pleasure to, spend this hour with you today. Metattude.com, that's METATTUDE.com.
yep,
We're going to have all the details in the show notes. We'll also have the ability to connect with David on LinkedIn. And he's also got an ebook that you can download called Master Your Vortex. So jump on and
yes,
have a read.
yeah. You can do that. I'm also in your chamber, and in the listings on your chamber on your website. I'm in there.
Mate, you can find us through, mate, as part of the veteran community. We appreciate the work that you've done, and mate, what a really interesting story. How life takes these amazing turns, and mid-40s, being able to phoenix yourself and come back up to here you are, well, grandfather, business owner, nice and settled, it seems.
Yeah, well, I'm not settled because I'm still looking at how can I do better? How can I improve? It's a lifelong learning journey, mate.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, David, thanks for joining us today on the Military Mindset for Business podcast. Take care. All the contact details are below. My name's Pete Liston.